Hello and welcome to the Odds Checker podcast. We are previewing the racing on Saturday, mainly at Ascot and a race at York as well for the return, or the second run, I should say, of the season for Enable in the King George. I'm joined by two of Odds Checker's fantastic stable of tipsters. Of course, it is the famous Andy Holding, who's been knocking around for a while, banging in winners for Odds Checker followers for a fairly long time, and one of the newer members of the team in Daryl Carter, whose exclusive naps of the day you can find on the Odds Checker app. And Daryl, you've had a pretty good run as of late, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah, it's been going quite well actually. Plus 24 points, I think, at the moment for July. So hopefully that good form can continue.
Very good. And Andy, as ever, how are you finding things at the moment?
Yeah, similar to Daryl, July's been okay. The last 2-3 days, not so good, but the last sort of fortnight or so, pretty strong. Ascot was good, fairly good. Looking forward to next week as well. Obviously, we're covering this weekend, which is great news. But other than Cheltenham Festival, I think it's probably my favourite race meetings of the year next week. Goodwood in particular, Galway. That 7-day bonanza over in Ballybrit. It's right up my street. National hunt racing, flat racing of highest or lowest quality, depending on which way you look at it. I really am keen for that to get underway on Monday.
Well, Andy, we're going to be sick of the sight of each other by this time next week, because we're speaking today, we're speaking tomorrow, we're speaking on Monday. We are previewing a whole host of the racing in the next week or so. So anybody listening to this or watching this, make sure you keep your eyes peeled, because there'll be plenty of Goodwood and hopefully Galway content coming your way from Andy. I'll do my best to say as little as possible. Before we get into the racing, I'm just going to point you in the direction of the Odds Checker app. Make sure you download it right now. There you can get the best odds, the best bookie offers, free bets, and of course the best tipsters in the game, two of which are joining me right now for this. And as I say, with Daryl, you can exclusively get his tip on the app. So if you like what Daryl has to say, and I'm sure that you will, then you have to download the app to get his nap into your phone as quickly as possible before those prices start to go. But of course, check Odds Checker and the app for the best prices as well. We are going to start by going through the kind of main 4 races, we'll say, at Ascot on Saturday. So that is starting with the Pat Eddery Stakes, going into the International Stakes, the Moe Chandon International Stakes, then the Nifty 50 Big Handicap, and then the King George, and then we're going to finish off by chatting through the York Stakes as well, which is wedged in the middle of those races during the day. We're recording this just after 1 o'clock on Thursday, so we've got the markets are basically just reforming as we speak. We've got the prices back out. It does mean that quite often these prices move fairly quickly, because they're effectively first issue prices after some of the runners come out. So apologies if Andy gives you a huge word for one, and by the time you're listening it's shortened up. But we endeavour as ever to give you the best prices, and you will find them on the app. So starting with the 150 at Ascot, which is the Pat Eddery Stakes, the listed race, formerly the Wakefield Stakes. And we have Toisol for Owen Burrows is the 130 favourite. Saiqua, John Gosden at 7-2. St Lawrence, Roger Varian 4-1. Naval Crown 5-1. And then 11-1 Bar. Andy, come to you here first. 7 furlong affair this. What catches your eye at the current prices?
Well, it's a difficult one, really. Which one sets the standard? Depends on whether you believe in speed figures or not, or just raw form, as it were. You'd argue that Saiqua is the standard bearer based on that third in the Coventry Stakes, which is normally a very good barometer for the rest of the season with regards to 2-year-olds. But I happen to feel as though this year's Coventry was slightly substandard. Certainly on the numbers, I was quite surprised when I did the speed figures for that race at the Boxer Track a few weeks back, and finding it so poor. I couldn't quite work it out, really, and watched the race back quite a few times to see one or two little nuances here, there and everywhere, and didn't really know what to make of it. All in all, I was just left a bit cold with that form, even though I did like Saiqua, and I put him up that day and he ran really well. I'd have to say he might have a little bit on his plate here up against Toisol, who of course won the Woodcote quite impressively. I thought he did well, actually, because it was a quite slowly run race. It was only a small field. I think there was only 5 runners, and he quickened up well to win. He quickened up well as well at Windsor when he won on his debut, beating a nice horse of Simon and Ed Crisfords, who's gone on to win subsequently. So I do think he's the most progressive horse of the two. I think he's the right favourite. But sandwiched in between Sayiko and Twassol is a nice horse of Roger Varian's, who I think is probably the value bet. I'm probably looking to put this horse up each way if I can get forward or one a bigger. And that's St. Lawrence, who won a very lowly race at Redcar, as he's suggested he would 2 starts ago. And then they pitched him into Group 2 company last time out at Newmarket, and he finished 4th behind Master of the Seas. Now, that horse clocked a very big number when that horse won on the July course a couple of weeks ago. I do think that race is of a fairly high standard. Certainly the better of the time figures that I've just discussed. And the horse that finished at 5th in that race, Ventura Tormenta, of course, lowered the colours of the Learjet over in France on Sunday. So I think collaterally that form and that time figure is very much the best what I've got going into this race. I thought St. Lawrence travelled really well. You could argue he just didn't quite get home, and that would be my only slight bugbear after his stiff 7 furlongs Ascot. A stiff, or arguably slightly stiffer 7 furlongs in the July course just caught him out. But I do like him. He goes well through his races, and I think we can back it. If I can say, you can back him each way based on those time figures that he did at the July course, and I think he's probably the one I'd go with.
So St. Lawrence, the selection for Andy, a 4-1. Before I go to you, Daryl, is there any? Because I know you are obviously, Andy, the man to go to for the kind of 2-year-old form, and your record in 2-year-old races is brilliant. And we've got a couple of kind of very, horses with 1 run under their belt, whether it's Enable Crown, who came 3rd on debut, Cobb and Chindit, both winning on debut and pitching up here for their 2nd start. Any of these are bigger prices put in a decent time?
No, none of them at all. It doesn't mean to say they can't. Of course, that's the difficulty when you're assessing 2-year-olds. They've just had the 1 run. You've only got 1 sample size. And if they've run in a slowly run race and they've won it, doesn't mean to say that's as good as they're ever going to be. They might improve tenfold if they go in a stronger run race. But me as a numbers man, I'll always go with the horses that have done it. Because when you're going up that grade or 2 higher, like some of these are, some of them might get found out. It's a bit of a culture shock having running slowly run races. All of a sudden now they've got to run flat out over a stiff track. I know with the numbers that St. Lawrence has already done that he's liable to do that. So the likes of Chindit, Cobb, for instance, who won at Haydock, game very slowly run races. I noticed the horse that got beat by Cobb was odds on the other day of Charlie Hills and got beat. So again, you're looking for guides and information off these slowly run races. Are they good or bad? And I think they've got to improve a hell of a lot. Naval Crown ran really well on his debut over on the July course, when finishing 3rd behind a horse called Youth Spirit, who is quite a nice horse, and the 3rd horse, Modern Youth, I think he'll be a better horse as the season goes on. That wasn't a bad novice stakes. But again, those ones with just the 1 run, they've got to improve significant. I like the ones who've run 2-3 times. And as I said, without repeating myself, St. Lawrence is the one.
St. Lawrence, a 4-1. I think everybody listening and watching, Andy, is happy for you to repeat yourself when you're repeating your tip. That's absolutely fine, especially if it goes in. Daryl, what do you make of the race?
Do you know what? I've not normally got a strong opinion on these 2-year-old races, as you know, because like Andy just said, the amount they can take a step forward or take a step backwards next time is always a slightly worrying when I'm having a bet. But these have got quite a few form lines that intertwine with each other. You mentioned Naval Crown there. He's got a form line through Magic Land that ties in with St. Lawrence. Magic Land was actually ahead of Naval Crown. I'm surprised that they've not put Magical Land in here instead of Naval Crown, because Magical Land was so slowly away and then finished on the bridle, just on hands and heels, beat Naval Crown quite comfortably. He had to work a little bit harder to beat St. Lawrence, albeit that was on debut. St. Lawrence does look like the solid option in here. His form stacks up everywhere. Obviously, from his debut run, the 5th and 6th one next time out, including the Royal Ascot winner. Of his win, that was sandwiched in between those 2 fourths. The 3rd won a 4-runner race next time out, and the 2nd and 3rd of that went out and won next time as well. So it is really rock solid. That Group 2 run in the Spurless Stakes was red hot. I do like him. I just have the same concern actually as Andy with his finishing effort. Where I think Tower Saul step up 7 furlongs is definitely really going to suit him. Real nice run at Epsom. Just looked so inexperienced. Didn't really handle the track. Jumped the path. Didn't really know what to do when his head hit the front, but then he stayed on quite strongly through the line. I mean, I thought it was a taking performance, and I think the more experience he gets, I think he's going to be very tough to beat here.
So Twassol and St. Lawrence, the 2 are looking at the current prices.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not entirely convinced that Sahika wants 7 furlongs either at the moment.
Okay.
So
It's always tough to be on a podcast following Andy because he talks so much sense. He said all the things you want to say before we even get there. So we're going to move on to the next round, and I'll give you first run. And that is the Moe and Shandon International Stakes, the Class 2 handicap. And here we have, just letting the market report, we have Blue Mist is the 9-2 favourite for Roger Charlton, ridden by Ryan Moore. Ebury for Martin Mead is 7-1. Mutamasik for Roger Varian, 11-1. Cliffs of Capri, 14-1 for Janie Osborne. Ashazi, 14-1 as well, alongside Gin Palace and Baird of Kent. And Charlie Fellows has and Richard Spencer, two up-and-coming Newmarket trainers, both at 16-1, with Chief of Chiefs and Kaiser Sose. Daryl, as I said, as I promised, you can have first run here. Maybe more up your street this one, with plenty of form lines to go through. What's taking your fancy?
It is, but I'm already down a punt on this as well, because Brian Epstein has come out at the last minute, and I felt for sure he was going to run over this 7 furlongs. But I think we should talk about the draw first of all. Royal Ascot, it was so obvious that, you know, the draw bias, but it wasn't just Royal Ascot. It's been there for a very long time. I mean, if you go back through the past winners of this race, 5 single-figure draws in this race have finished in the top 3 in the last 10 years. Just 5, and only one of them has won it. That was Heaven's Guest back in 2015. But even last year, it's still 21, 23, 27, 26 were the first 4 home. So I think being drawn high at Ascot is just an advantage. I didn't want to have to say it, but I do really like Blue Mist here. I think he makes plenty of appeal. He was 6th in the Victoria Cup last year off a mark of 97, 3rd in this race last year off a mark of 96. He's a pound lower this time round. He's unexposed over 7 furlongs, just the 4 starts. Only 3 of those have come on turf. One of those was second behind Breath of Air on seasonal return. Now, he wasn't disgraced there, but I did expect a little bit more. But he went off favourite for the Wokingham when last seen at 7-2. That was over 6 furlongs. He was slowly away, and he was just denied in running. I thought that was a really, really eye-catching run. Stepped back up to 7 furlongs to suit him. There's a lot to like other than the price of 9-2 at the head of a big field. The only other one I would be slightly tempted to back in here is Mutamasik. I thought you could forgive that run last time in the Bunbury Cup when he just bombed out. He might be handicapped to his best off a mark of 102 now, and that might be the reason that Jim Crowley has gone over to ride Elikam, or prefers to go and ride Elikam, because he has got off this horse 3 times now, which is a slight concern. But I thought he had a bit more to come. This is a very, very tricky race, but Blue Mist, everything, he ticks every box at the moment apart from the price box. So if he has a little drift on the day, it'd probably be my selection.
It's a funny one as well, because it's only in these big field handicaps where you think 9-2 is a short price, and often you swerve them, and then when they bolt up, you think to yourself, actually, you know what, maybe it wasn't such a short price after all. Andy, what do you make of this 7 furlong handicap?
Yeah, I quite like betting in these races. I don't mind having 2 or even 3 bets. Probably two's amount the maximum amount I'll put up on site. But myself personally, I wouldn't mind having a couple more just in case, if they're the right prices and I feel as though I've got a bit of an edge. Most bookmakers tend to go 5 or even 6 places when they've really no right to, trying to attract your business. Daryl's made a lot of sense with the draw bias. It's something that obviously a lot of us pros cottoned onto at a very early stage at the Royal Meeting, and no real reason to suggest it'll ride any different. The track might be quite narrow as well over the weekend. Obviously, they're saving certain parts of the course for later on in the season. And it's noticeable that the real 2 strong pace horses here, that's where you've got to look at where the likely pace is going to come from. The ones I could see were Jack's Point, drawn 11, and the other horse drawn 10 as well, Gin Palace. Like to force the issue. You can see where they're drawn in the centre. They'll probably edge towards the near side and drag the ones that are drawn double figures in and around them into the back end of the race. That was dead right with Blue Mist. Hugely unlucky in the Silver Woking, the consolation race, won of course by Chief of Chiefs. Had he got a clear run, he might have won, he might not, I don't know. Hard to say with those unlucky horses where they would have finished. I think he has been priced up as if he's won the race. That's what I will say. I think some sharks have got 7-8 to 1 about him in midweek because they've obviously spotted the run and wanted to get with him each way. Ryan Moore's been booked as well. That's also shaved another point or so off. So You're looking down the barrel around about 4-1 now, which to my eyes makes absolute zero appeal, despite him being one of the most likely winners. I'm looking for sort of double figure odds, and I do think Ebury also ticks quite a few boxes. Another thing you need to be looking at here at Ascot, his horses have run well over the track before. He's a course winner. That was over a mile last year in a small field. And he ran in I think it was the Buckingham Palace, wasn't it? The first day, on the first race on the first day. And they split into 3 groups, funny enough, that day. And he actually won his group of 4 right on that far side row, which was the swamp, as we like to call it at Ascot, where all the action took place near side. So effectively, he's 2 for 2 here at Ascot. He doesn't know he hasn't won because he beat all the horses he's supposed to do in and around them. Trained by Martin Mead as well, whose horses are in much better form than they were perhaps 3 or 4 weeks ago, as we saw Method win last week. He's drawn 13, right to where the 2 big pace setters are. So I think he's got to be a player. And the other one to mention as well, at even bigger price, and this is basically born out of his track record here at Ascot, and that's Cliffs of Capri, drawn stall 18, 4th in that aforementioned Buckingham Palace on his latest run. He's also got some fantastic form if you go back and look at his career record here at Ascot. I don't think he's finished out the first 4 in 5 starts, winning twice. He's also a winner in Maidan as well, over 7 furlongs out there in the desert in the middle of their summer stroke, our winter. So he remains in good form. And Jamie Osborne has always had a special affinity with these kind of 7 furlong events. I think he won the inaugural running of the Buckingham Palace many years ago. And he runs in the colours of the famous, what do they call them? The something 5, is it? The Melbourne 10, isn't it? The Melbourne 10. The Melbourne 10 colours. So lots to like about those 2 prices. As I'm looking here now, I'm looking around about 8-1 Ebury, around about 14-16-1 Cliffs of Capri. I'd probably back those 2 each way, thinking surely with their track form, one of them being the frame at the very least.
Well, there you have it. We've given positive words for the top 4 in the market there. Daryl, Blue Mister 9-2, and Mutamasik at 11-1. Andy there with a strong case for Ebury. He'll be ridden by Sheen Murphy on the day at 7-1 currently, and Cliffs of Capri at 14-1 for Jamie Osborne. On to the 3 o'clock now, the nifty 50 handicap over 1 mile, and there is if you don't like the short price favourites, well, I mean, far fewer runners here at the moment, just I think 8 currently run, so be a bit careful when you're backing these each way in case one comes out. But Saar is the 11-4 favourite for John Gosden, ridden by Frankie Dettori. Johan 7-2, Dance Fever 6-1 alongside Evening Sun, Great Ambassador 7-1, Tell Me All 8-1, 18-1 Air Harbour, and Las Vegas 25-1. Andy, come to you first here. What do you make of these? A few unexposed types in there as well.
Yeah, 2 I like. I'm not suggesting I'm going to put 2 up in a race like this because there's a great deal of mileage in that. I probably have to work it down to 1, and a lot depends on what odds they are on the day. And if all, of course, at the moment, dead 8 runners stay in, it's quite a good betting race if they do. Czar's the favourite, as you mentioned. He was a good second at Lord Campari in a very strong time figure at Newbury on his seasonal reappearance. And everyone cottoned on to that and backed Lord Campari as if he couldn't get beat next time out in the Sir Henry Cecil Stakes in Newmarket. But unfortunately, the variant horse pulled like a Mustang and just didn't get home. So you can't really judge him on that. He was workmanlike more than the spectacular at Yarmouth, I thought. He's subsequently gone up to mark of 94, which is still okay. But he does face a couple of horses here I think potentially could be better handicapped than him. I do like Johan. I think he's a real strong stayer at the trip. I would have actually fancied him to win the Britannia. I think he was down to running the Britannia, but they didn't go there. Maybe felt as though that run had come a bit too soon after running and winning at Newbury only a week or so before. They've left him off. They brought him here. I still think 96 is workable. The yard's now in unbelievably good form, Haggis team. I think he's the kind of horse that win one of these big Premier handicaps sooner rather than later, maybe a Cambridge later on in the season, because he's a strong stayer at the trip. And he's got a good mind as well. You look at him the way he races. Whatever's in front of him, he just runs at it and he just keeps getting his head down and battling. And he won't mind if there's a bit of rain around over the weekend. I think there's 1 or 2 showers forecast because it was on the easy side that day. What do you want at Newbury? And the other one to mention as well is Great Ambassador, who went through the Britannia like a good horse. That Britannia was an extremely strong time figure I got. I've been looking to follow that form. It has worked out incredibly well. I think the Calusi, the winner's a group horse in waiting. Finest Sound, the horse that finished second, was really unlucky to bump into another well-handicapped horse next time out. So I think that form's good. He got hampered a little bit late on when he was beaten, but like I say, he went through the race like a nice horse. The better ground will suit him. So at the moment, those are my two against the field. I think they've run in good, solid handicaps where the pace has been strong, big fields. And I do like that when you run at Ascot. You need strong stays out over that stiff mile. So Johan and Great Ambassador with my two to concentrate on its very moment in time.
7-2 Johan, best price at the moment. Great Ambassador 7-1 for Rafe Beckett and Harry Bentley. Daryl, do you agree with Andy, or you've got a couple others you want to take them on with?
I do like Great Ambassador. It is one I'm leaning towards, but I really, really like this Evening Sun. This race is unbelievable. This is one of the best races of the day. This is. I've got a lot of respect for Tsar. I think he's a fantastic horse, and I think he will prove better than 94 in time, no doubt. He will be popular on the day. Frankie Dettori factor at Ascot, of course. 11-4 is mighty short, though, in this race because Evening Sun is making his handicap debut off a mark of 88. Now, he's given an opening mark of 78, but he ran in a novice race at Newmarket and absolutely bolted up. He's gone up £10 for that. It was almost like Connections weren't bothered about handicaps by the way he won. He was the horse that was second to him went out and ran third next time in a listed event behind Surf Dancers, rated 95, and Boccaccio, rated 97. In behind was Symbolised, Royal Commando, and Ventura Rebel, all rated in the hundreds. That looks strong for him. He did that with a minimum of fuss. But then you go back through his rest of his form. He was second behind King Leodonis at Newmarket previously, beaten 2 lengths. Very green that day, ran on really strongly. King Leodonis rated 102. I mean, he was hard pushed that day. Previous to that, he was behind Cherokee Trail. That form is rock solid. Obviously, we know what that horse has done. There's a horse who was in second called Imrahor, who Andy knows quite well, is keeping an eye on. And Hook On, who won at Royal Ascot, was in third. He was just really green that day, didn't even know his job. This horse has got so much more to come. If he's not better than a mark of 88, I'll be absolutely shocked. He's a very strong stayer. This mile's definitely going to suit him. There's a drop of rain around Ascot on Saturday morning. I just might take the sting out of the ground. They've done a bit of watering as well this week. It's gone from good to firm to good, so that will benefit him as well. I think he's got loads more to come. Ryan Moore's on board, 6-1, lovely price. But you could make a very similar form case for Great Ambassador as well. He's had some really strong horses in behind. The likes of Berkshire Rocco has been behind him at Goodwood. Diami, Mambo Knights, who's 93. King of Athens is rated 98. His Chelmsford Win, the horses in behind were rated 86 and 82. So a mark of 88 for him, back on better ground. He could go very well as well. I'd just worry if he was the strongest of stayers over this trip. That would be my only concern with him. But I think Evening Sun has got tons more to come.
As often seems to be the case with these handicaps in kind of hot fields with unexposed horses, you probably have to run a good deal better than your mark. You know, you can outrun your mark and still come second or third in these. But I liked you talking about Connections not being too fussed about the handicap mark. I like the idea of the Queen on the phone to Roger, absolutely livid that Evening Sun's been pushed out last time out, ruining her mark and going forward. Somehow I can't see it. But Evening Sun for the Queen and trained by Roger Charlton and ridden by Ryan Moore is 6-1. So that's Daryl's one. It seems like a fair bit of respect for Sark at the top of the market, but not a price to get involved with at 11-4. Johan 7-2 and Great Ambassador 7-1. 2 races to go. This is the last race we're going to cover at Ascot, and it's fair to say it's probably not a brilliant betting heat. It's over a mile 4. It's the King George, the 6th and Queen Elizabeth stakes, the Group 1 on the day, part of the British Champion Series, and Enable returns after her run behind Gaiath last time, and she's currently 8-15, being taken on by Japan at 100-30, Anthony Van Dyke 11-1, Sovereign 14-1. So 3 O'Brien runners to take on Enable for John Gosden. As I say, 4-runner race. I know there'll be people listening out there with some very naughty each way bets with 3 places, and they're getting a run with only 4 runners. But this is what we've got at the moment. Andy, I'll come to you first here. I mean, what do we make of Enable's last run? Because anybody who listened to John Gosden and what he said about the way she came into the race beforehand would have seen that she looked like one of the worst even money shots of all time. She ran pretty much exactly as John Gosden expected her to, with Gaiath going out in front and her being unable to chase him down. So how do we compare this current Enable to some of her best form over the past couple of years?
I think she wasn't, as John Gosden said, on her A game or to maximum capacity first time out. I think anyone could see that. And I think Frankie rode her accordingly as well, didn't he? He was very easy on her in the last filling. He rode her just to come home nicely. He knew he couldn't win. He knew Gayarth was obviously still maintaining that very strong gallop like he did at Sandown. And Gayarth, as we've seen, he's one of the best horses in the world when he's let loose over a mile and a quarter. I mean, it's not as if he got beat by a total muppet. Look, mile and a half is always the best trip. You know, that's when she comes into her own. Mile and a quarter, yes, of course, she's fully effective over, but not against a horse like Gayarth, who effectively had about a 6 or 7 length head start. I think they would have been delighted with the run. Yes, they would have loved to have won the Eclipse, a prestigious race, but I think they've always had in mind to come back and make history here and win the King George again, which would be an astonishing feat. Winner of the race the last 2 seasons. Reliable, tough as you like, classy as ever. A little bit unlucky not to win the Arc, arguably, slipping onto that far side rail when Wall Guys came down the middle on the better ground. I think Frankie would have won the race again. He might have stayed in his own lane. And it's obvious how this race is going to be run. I'd imagine Sovereign's in there to make the run in. I would have thought, looking at him, I thought he might have gone elsewhere. He looks more of an Irish St Ledger horse, or even a stay for next season. Look at something to take over from Kew Gardens, arguably further down the line. But he'll make the running for the other two in their string. Obviously, Japan being the number 1, so it's going to be an honest test. They won't want to make this a dawdle, and they certainly want to make or keep Enable honest in if she is going to win. It's not a betting race for me. I can't see any other angle in there. The each way opportunities have been taken out. So unless you're absolutely desperate to have a bet in the race, and the only bet you can have arguably is Japan, because he's the only horse who he's in that kind of bracket. He's a top class horse in his own right. He hasn't quite come to himself so far this season. Royal Ascot was neither here nor there. He's run last time out again was okay without being spectacular, and he only just scrambled down when he won the big race to Jumonte over at York last season. So you're hard pushed to be having your last fiver on him as well. So look, if Daryl's got a strong view, I can't imagine he has, because by the sound of it, he doesn't like betting odds on, and he like me likes to look for a little bit more bang to his book. Then I'll let him have the final say. But yeah, I expect Enable to win, but I wouldn't have a bet in the race. It just doesn't make any appeal to me.
Just for those who are wondering whether they should put Enable in their Saturday ACCA maybe. Would you at 8.15, the current best price, would you be a backer or a layer if I pushed?
I'll probably be a backer, to be fair. Yeah, but I could just make that. When I look at a race like this and look at a horse like that, I'll just enjoy the race for what it is and just don't get involved from a betting perspective. We don't have to have a bet in every race, do we?
Absolutely not. No. Although I've heard you say you can find value anywhere, Andy, so I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I know, and sometimes I will bet odds on if I think something's a complete shoe-in and I don't want to give it up. But I mean, I'd never put a horse like that up on the site. I'd get laughed out of town when I put in a 47 shot up.
Yes, indeed, and rightly so, maybe. Daryl.
Yeah.
10 points for Enable.
No, I do completely agree. I think it's more of a fascinating race to watch from a tactical perspective rather than a betting perspective. I think a lot is going to sit on Frankie's shoulders on how close does he sit to Sovereign, because he sat quite well. I know it was just a prep run of the Eclipse, if you like. He sat well off Gaiath and failed to pick up. Now, that was fitness, of course, but Sovereign, if he gets loose on the lead, I just wonder what's Frankie going to do? Is he going to be more worried about Japan in behind him, or is he going to be more worried about Sovereign ahead of him? It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I can't find any sort of angle into this race. The one thing I will say is, though, I do think this might have been an early season target for Japan. He's run over a mile and a quarter the last twice. His best trip is, of course, a mile and a half. He now has had those 2 runs and he steps up here. I think we're in for a really good race despite the 4 runners. But no bet for me. Just be interesting to see what Frankie does aboard Enable.
I'll tell you what, the one thing I will say about this race, and it's more of a track thing rather than it's putting the right horses on the right track. Looking at a horse like Sovereign, who's very much a strong front runner when he's at his best, obviously nicked the Irish Derby. If this was at the Curragh, I'd definitely have a few quid on him if he was like 16, 20 to 1, just because I think that track definitely plays into the strengths of front runners, the Curragh. I think there's been, the last 2-3 years now, there's been a massive bias to horses floating along from the front and staying there. It's very hard to make ground from the back of the field. But Ascot is the absolute polar opposite. horses that make the running hardly ever make all at Ascot. You look at every round track race at Ascot this season. Whatever led turning for home was dead on its feet. And unfortunately, Sovereign, being a front runner, he's just going to be almost like a sacrificial lamb to the other three.
Yeah, but he might just be a distraction for Frankie rather than anything else. Putting Frankie to the test about how far he sits off the pace. And Japan might just see if he can pick Enable up in the home straight later on. Frankie will be aware that Sovereign obviously has won the Irish Derby off the front end.
Might have had a few nightmares about letting an O'Brien front runner go in the last few weeks as well.
Yeah, like I say, Andy is completely right. It's just it's a fascinating race from a tactical perspective rather than a betting perspective.
Yeah, interesting. And maybe for those who are desperate to find an angle, I'm just interpreting Andy's words, but maybe if there's a match bet on the day around picking prices between Anthony Van Dyke and Sovereign, you could side with the one who won't be front running at Ascot. Maybe. But that's just my way of trying to make this a little bit more interesting from a betting point of view. But it should be a cracking race anyway. And fingers crossed, Enable gets home and we can start looking ahead to another tilt at the Arc. We're going north now. We're leaving Ascot. We're going back in time as well because the King George is at 3:35 at Ascot. We are going backwards and up north to the 2:40 at York, which is the Sky Bet York Stakes, the Group 2. And Daryl, you've already mentioned the favourite here in reference to Jim Crowley, so I'll start with you. But El Arkham is the 9-4 favourite. Aspetar is 5-1. Fox Chairman 6-1. King of Comedy 7-1. Regal Reality 8-1. And though that is your lot, so at the moment, just 5 runners, I think, as it stands currently. So Daryl, I'll start with you here.
Yeah.
Feels like a race, a couple of horses in here with hard luck stories recently. Who do you think is going to get their nose in front?
To be honest with you, I'm still yet to work out the winner. It's a very, very tricky race, this. Elikam is the right favourite. He goes well here at York. Form figures are 3-1, 3-1, I think. He's the right favourite. The thing is, there's form lines that ties all of these horses in together. So Elikam obviously ties in with Telecaster from their meeting at Haydock, went behind Lord North. Telecaster ties through with a horse called Queen over in France with Aspetar. Aspetar and Fox Chairman tie in, and of course Elikam had the beating of King of Comedy, giving him £7, and Regal Reality and Lord Glitters in the Judmont last year. So there's lots of bits and pieces of form to get stuck into. If you believe the form of the Haydock run behind Lord North, if you're a true believer that Lord North has improved £12 in 3 runs or 2 runs this season, then you ought to be snapping up this 9-4, because Elikam was very unlucky at Haydock. Dane O'Neill set the fractions on him just to sort of stop-start gallop. It didn't really suit Elikam. He took a bit of a blow and then ran on again. So he would have had the beating of that horse there. And given that horse is now rated £4 below Enable, 9-4 in a race like this for Elikam, you should be snapping up if you believe that form. I think you can tear the Lord North form at Royal Ascot apart, personally. So I'm not a total believer just yet. Look, there's lots to like about a few of these. I think King Comedy's got a bit to find, especially now £7 worse off of Elikam, but he does have conditions to suit, so there'll be no excuses today. I am a sucker, and this is very unprofessional, but I'm a sucker for Fox Chairman at the moment. I was ready to leave him behind at Sandown, behind Aspetar. I was ready to leave him behind as soon as he was about to fade away, and then he stuck on gamely and stuck his head down and just gave me the impression there's a bit more to come from him. He's unexposed on a quicker surface. He could have more to offer as a 4-year-old. All of these do set a decent form standard, but none of them are going to go on to reach any bigger heights than what they are already, in my opinion. I'm going to give Fox Chairman one last try. 6-1 is a little bit on the short side for me. I prefer 8s, so we'll see what happens in the day. 8s or 9s, maybe. Prefer double figures.
So,
but look,
that is a first.
Yeah, I prefer.
Tipping up our price isn't there, but
I'd prefer. I think the most likely winner is Elikam, but I'll be taking a chance on Fox Chairman, unprofessionally.
El Arkham 9-4, Fox Chairman currently 6-1. I should say, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the markets are reforming, and when I loaded up my oddschecker grid, Telecaster and Lord Glitters weren't showing, but I've refreshed, and Telecaster is 3-1, and Lord Glitter's 10-1. So just to make up the field there, Andy. Before I come to you, what's catching your eye at the moment with this 7-runner field?
Well, the figures definitely point to Elek in every which way you look at it. He's clocked some amazing speed figures when he's been absolutely at his best, and there's no doubt that York does bring out the best in him. When he beat Adair here in this race last year, I literally could not believe my eyes, because I thought Adair was a good thing that day. The rain had come for him, and he went into the race in really good order, having won at Sandown very easily. And then Elek just turned him away as easy as you like. I think he won by about 3.5 lengths, but he was very strong in the latter part of his race. And I think that's the key to him. He always seems to hit a little bit of a mini flat spot here, then everywhere. He should have won the Judd Monty, but he got in a bit of a pocket when they quickened. They didn't go overly quick that day, and he got left behind and then ran on very strongly. And he was really good here. Went last year, like I say, when they had soft ground, and he was able to go a nice gallop and quicken off that gallop and win quite readily. If it does rain on the Naismar on Saturday, and I think Daryl's already pointed out, and I've seen as well, that there is quite a bit of a low front coming over from the Atlantic over the Friday into Saturday period. And if it goes good to softer or even softer in places, that 9-4 I don't think will last too much longer. He should confirm for me. Telecaster, of course, was behind him when he finished second to Lord North at Haydock. And I think Telecaster, he hasn't really come back to the kind of form, in my eyes, that saw him beat Too Darn Hot when he won the Dante a couple of years ago. Yes, he's been running okay. He's winning last time out in Chauncey. It doesn't really matter so much. The horse that finished second to a filly called Romanesca. He's only a listed filly at best. I've been looking at those French form lines throughout the course of the last 3 or 4 months. King of Comedy is just too much of a dodge pot for me to have anything to do with it. And I don't think he truly stays 1.25 miles. The only time he tried it was in this race last year. Sorry, in the Judd Monty last year, when his run flattened out and Elek was definitely going away from him at the finish. I'm also a bit of a sucker for Fox Chairman. So much so that I actually put this horse up to win the Queen Anne first time out this year, but he got a bad draw, and unfortunately Sylvester didn't really get him to settle, and that was that really. He did run much better at Sandown behind many cores. Of course, Espetar was second, and a good second at that. So those two are very closely matched. I thought Espetar ran a nice race that day. He was at the back, very keen. He came with a lovely run out the outside too. It looked like he was going to win. Didn't quite get home, but the exertions of that exuberance early on rather took its toll. I think he's a player. So this is a really trappy race. A game with the only 7 runners. It's you're forced to have a win bet really, and because I'm forced to have a win bet, and I've got to go with the figures, and it have to be with Elek, particularly as I said with the rain coming.
I like 9-4 there for Andy, with the rain on its way in the York Stakes, and 2 of the most reluctant tips I've ever heard, maybe for Fox Chairman, but maybe look out for a bit of a drift. As we say, 7 runners, so just the 2 places. And that is the end of this podcast and video previewing Saturday's racing, focusing on the one no-bet race of the weekend in the King George, but looking at a few races at Ascot and to both Daryl and Andy for their expert oddschecker or on the odds tipping. You can find both of their tips every day using oddschecker or on the oddschecker app. I implore you to download the app immediately. If you're listening to this, that means you like betting on horse racing, and if you like betting on horse racing, then you need to have the oddschecker app for all of the best odds, the best free bets, the best tipsters as well, such as these 2. Enjoy the racing, and most importantly, please gamble responsibly.